Oh, it's time for class.
Class is in session!
Roll call!
Bueller?
I'm gonna be late for class.
Bueller?
Am I hallucinating here? Just what in the hell do you think you're doing?
I'm late for class.
You're mine now. You belong to me.
Did you study for the test?
No more complaining. No more Mr. Kim left to go to the bathroom. Nothing. There is no bathroom.
Hello, classmates. Welcome to another episode of Middle Class Film Class. I'm your host for today, Pete.
I'm the guest for today, Jason from Binge Movies.
That's right. And today on the episode, our review episode, we're going to be reviewing Tyler's pick from the Wheel of Destiny, The Iron Claw.
Were there any bonding exercises that you guys did?
Trust falls or anything? Kind of. I mean,
that's kind of what wrestling is.
Yeah.
The Iron Claw is a true story about the Von Erich brothers, the biggest rock stars in wrestling to ever come out of Texas.
They were just godlike all over the world. They were like superheroes.
We're going to get copyright stricken for this for sure.
A lot at once.
And we were training with these professional wrestlers, and it was demanding.
Because you have to really commit to that full.
And like hitting the mat over and over and over again.
The last time I jumped up so high over the ring, and I'm looking at him like, this is gonna suck. Remember, I hit super hard, and I look up, and I see this guy, he stands up and goes, oh, now you're flying, boy.
The support and true love between the brothers, that was really special.
It didn't feel like any other film I've ever worked on before.
Harris, Zach, and I, there's a brotherhood now.
All right. The Iron Claw just came out last year. A lot of buzz. No Oscar buzz, though, for some reason. I don't know if you have any thoughts about that, Jason. But first off, thanks for being here, buddy.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This gave me an opportunity to talk about a movie I've never watched. I'm pretty excited about that. I still haven't seen it, but I think we'll be able to have an informed discussion.
It'll be very interesting. It'll feel like I'm talking to one of my other co-hosts.
That's how it always is. There's always one in every group.
I watched the movie on the way over here in the car on my iPod Nano, and I have thoughts.
I'm actually watching it right now as we record. I got it down here in the HBO Max app, and I'm like, oh.
We have a crossover in the universe. Kevin from Real Spoilers and Heather Sachs in the chat right now. What's up, guys?
I'm not aware of either one of those people.
Heather says that who's the fresh-faced fellow? That's our benevolent binge overlord from Akron, Ohio.
That's right.
Yeah, Binge Movies. If you guys haven't seen the show or listened to the show, it's an experience. I don't think it's so much a show as is an experience more than anything.
I don't know what that means and if that's good or bad, but I'll take it.
Yeah, no, I think early on, and when I don't even remember where I heard about the show. It's got to be from like Heather or one of the people online that I follow. And I think I found her from. Anyways, we found the show, and I'm like, what are these people ranking? What the fuck are these movies? There's like 5 movies that have seemingly no connection. Everybody seems like they're talking about seasons 5.2 and stuff. And I'm like, I have no fucking clue. I'm like too big for my britches in that aspect. And then I drank the Kool-Aid and I completed the challenge a couple of times. You want to tell our listeners who haven't listened to your show how it's different than every other set of 3 white guys talking about movies every week?
Because there's only one white guy, and I'm only whitish.
Technically, by technicality, you're white.
Yeah, correct. So, man, how is it different? I don't want to go on a superiority trip, but I mean, is it the single greatest movie podcast in the history of movie podcasts? Maybe. I don't know. Other people have said it. Yeah. So
just put a question mark at the end, and it's totally legally binding.
It's true. That's right. Yeah. Am I the greatest of all time? Could be. People are saying. Big if true. You know, the movie podcast industry, for lack of a better term, has really changed a lot since I got into it. And at the time I got started, it was a lot of people talking about either individual movies, just doing sort of a blow for blow recount of the plot, or they were doing bad movies, like let's pick a bad movie and let's trash it. And obviously some people were really good at both of those things, but most people were terrible at both those things. And that's what movie podcasts essentially were. And I was like, well, at the time there's a lot of franchises and stuff coming out. And I was like, nobody's really looking at these things comprehensively of like, we're talking about reboots, but we're not categorizing them, ranking them, comparing them. Nobody's sitting down and watching all of it at one time and talking about it. And no one was at that time. And so that's really kind of how the show got started. And then it evolved from there. We got away from franchises and sequels because you can only do that for so long. Mm-hmm. Then we realized, well, all of film is on a continuum. All of film is available to us. And so why don't we just continue to push the envelope and widen what we talk about? Find common themes across films, sometimes that seem very similar, sometimes don't seem similar at all, and invite a wide array of guests to come in and talk about them. And so we spend about, give or take 20 minutes per movie on our ranking episodes, and then we do a deep dive review. We cover history, philosophy, psychology, film history, everything in between. And there's a lot of chaos, some slight perversion. This is our horniest summer yet. As things heat up outside, it's getting more and more graphically sexual, really for the first time ever, but that's great. And this season, as we currently go, is kind of coming up to a wrap, but we're immediately going to shift over into VHS Summer 4. It's the 4th annual VHS Summer, of which you used to be the reigning king of summer, the beach lord
at the crown
of the beach with your golden banana hammock. Mm-hmm. But yeah, and we're gonna be doing the films of Andy Sedaris, at least 4 of them. Molly
sweet.
Raz, who's film Twitter Illuminati celebrity, glitterati, Kate Bush #1 fan on the internet. And we're going through the movies one by one, do a special series. It's called Sex on the Beach, the films of Andy Sedaris. So we're doing Malibu Express, Hard Ticket to Hawaii, Picasso Trigger, and whatever the fuck the next one is.
Did you backward engineer that when you bought the 4-disc set, the King of Sleaze set that was available on like Severin or something like that?
No, I wasn't forward thinking enough to be like, let me buy 16 of this. It's been 13 films, and no, I wasn't. But they are available on Tubi. So if you don't want to buy a box of softcore erotica, then you can just go on Tubi and watch them as of this live stream.
Yeah, no, I saw that pop up. It wasn't a notable distributor. It was a Walmart bargain basement. How many crappy movies we can squeeze into one disc? And I hadn't seen any of them before, but that piqued my interest in Hard Ticket to Hawaii because of the rocket launcher blow up doll scene, and we reviewed it on the show.
Oh my God, a pinnacle of so many different things.
Yeah. It's a fun one to talk about. I think Sedaris is an interesting character anyway. So I've been slacking this year on your season of your show.
Yeah, you have.
Last 2 years, not like the full seasons, completed, and I was like banging through them. I made the proclamation in 2023. I think I'm going to be the first one to complete, and that just means I have too much free time. And now I don't have that free time, and I'm like picking and choosing, and I don't know. I may not complete it this season.
And I've already told you in private to give up whatever these other things that are demanding your attention are.
Yeah, the job that puts a roof over my head.
This is not my problem.
I know. It sounds like a lot of excuses.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of low commitment.
Yeah, I'm of low character, and my bloodline is weak, and I apologize.
That's correct.
So
I can tell just by being on this stream with you that the aura around you is much darker than it was before because your thetan levels not good. Not good, brother.
No, it's being taken out of me. I hear dog snoring. I love it. By the way.
You think I'm prescribing these movies. I'm not. I'm simply delivering what's prescribed to me from on high.
Oh, yeah.
It's for the purpose of your cleansing,
yes.
For you to be washed. And your spirit is getting heavier and heavier and heavier because you're not being washed in the blood of binge movies.
Binge movies. Well, You know what? You convinced me. Maybe I'm going to have to do it. I'm going to have to like cram every high school exam I've ever taken.
You're basically talking about my weekly existence.
Yeah, there you go.
And then when I'm not doing that, I'm deciding to rewrite a flop movie.
I'm just going to say, you have to have some free time because you keep writing that damn script.
Yeah, when I'm not doing that, I'm like, what movie should I review now? So I'll be working on FX for Patreon soon, which I haven't seen in a long time.
Nice.
I've seen FX2 more recently. Not a great film.
I don't know either one of them, honestly. I thought FX2 was I didn't know there was a sequel to FX. I thought it was just the title. I don't know, like 2001. It was not the sequel to 2000.
Like Mannequin too. You didn't realize there was a Mannequin. You just thought Mannequin as well.
The title made it sound like it was like a model of a car or something.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
well, it's just it's like F/X2, and you're like, what is this? Yeah.
Yeah, not for me. Not for my eyes. Not until it's on Binge Movies season 9 or whatever.
That's right.
So Tyler's gone. He's been succumbed by Montezuma's revenge. He drank the water in Mexico. And Joseph, he's in parts unknown. I think he's in Disneyland right now. So I said, who can I have to talk very eloquently with a deep, sultry baritone, a zaddy voice about professional wrestling and the Von Erich brothers? And
eloquently, but not succinctly.
Yeah, no. That is not either of our strong suits.
Fair enough.
But please tell our listeners about your history with professional wrestling or regional wrestling.
Yeah. Let me tell you about what it's like to be a nerd. Look, I grew up in a household where my dad hated two things. Loved movies, but he hated two things. Three things. He hated Ronald Reagan. He hated professional wrestling, and he hated film criticism. I share one of those three hatreds.
Okay.
Let you guess which one. So they would take the syndicated television shows and the matches and stuff like that because we're roughly the same age. I think you're a little bit younger than me.
Just turned 38.
Yeah. So a hair younger than I am. And they would run a show that was like basically a compilation show on Saturdays. And this would be the WWF. And WCW did this as well, called Superstars. And then I forget what WCW's was because I'm basically in the Northeast and never watched it. Came on at 6:05 Eastern, though, on the Superstation. And so I would have to kind of sneak it that way and then watch on Saturday mornings and then in between cartoons or in between doing chores or whatever else I was doing. And that was during the Bret the Hitman Hart era. Of course, the Hulk Hogan era was big, too. I was younger then. And then I just happened to be a teenage boy in the late 1990s when this thing called the Monday Night War, a.k.a. Attitude Era, happened.
Yeah.
NWO, DX, everybody was going around saying, suck it. And I still wasn't watching wrestling. And it was like, if you weren't watching wrestling and didn't understand the references by like 1997, 98, you were a cultural outsider.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started watching it, and originally a group of us got together to say that we were watching it because it was so stupid that we were going to watch it and make fun of it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but it was really just because we were teenage boys who couldn't admit that we actually thought it was cool. And so we'd get together and be snarky about it. And then before the end of spring, we were like, oh my God, what's the next thing that's going to happen? Steve Austin would drive a Zamboni in, and then he'd drive a Zamboni in. We were just obsessed with it.
You guys were that scene in Tommy Boy when both of
David
exactly
Spade
and Chris Farley I'll change it if you want to change it. It's fine, I don't want to change it.
That's 100% the picture. And then I watched it for a few years, then didn't watch it, and like most wrestling fans became lapsed after the early 2000s. But something interesting happened in the 2000s, which was all of this wrestling history, because wrestling was a very secretive form of media, right? Because it originally started off as a con, a way of duping people of their money. So all of these, not quite podcasts, but websites and interviews and different stuff were starting to really come out online, like in the late 2000s, early 2010s. And the history of the larger world of professional wrestling before the WWF started to get told. Books were getting written, and at that time, that was way more interesting than what was happening on any wrestling program, which in the United States was basically just the WWE and an organization called TNA, and which was way, 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 way down the totem pole. So I found that my fascination with professional wrestling culture, like behind the scenes and professional wrestling history, far exceeded my interest in professional wrestling. So it's like being really into movie history and not going to the movie theater.
Sure.
I don't watch movies.
It's basically how modern directors are. You ask most directors now, and they're like, I can't remember the last time. Christian Bale, I don't watch movies.
Yeah.
I love the history of movies, though.
Yeah. Yeah, basically, yeah. So I kind of inadvertently became a hobbyist student of professional wrestling. And in one of the big, what they were called territories, were the big territories in Texas, which had several large territories, was World Class Championship Wrestling, which is the Von Erich's home territory. So, which is this movie is I would say spiritually faithful, factually at times kind of loose, but it doesn't matter. Retelling not so much of that territory or even professional wrestling, but the story of the family and Kevin Von Erich in particular, played by Zac Efron.
Did you know all of them? I mean, were you as a more or less a historian of wrestling? Were they, like the trailer says, like gods among men in that? Were they the big shit?
Yeah, and again, wrestling was really regional because they were around really at just the beginning of cable television, and they kind of cover that with the ESPN deal that they ended up getting in the. And one of the things that they downplay is that one of the brothers, Michael, there's a line about it, but they don't really explore it in the movie, which is understandable because there's so much to their story.
Yeah,
they cover so much. Is that Michael helped produce the television, and he introduced all of these really creative elements of music and camera work and all this other sort of stuff that Vince McMahon and the WWF would later steal. And the thing was that Fritz legitimately saw very little value in that, which is why, like in the movie, he's like, nobody cares about camera angles. We're talking about wrestling.
Yeah, I know.
He didn't have the bigger picture of wrestling as television product, but yet one of his youngest sons did and was really an innovator of that. And that there was of no value to Fritz. He didn't understand it.
Yeah, it almost felt like for him, the actual execution of the sport and like the prestige behind being a true champion was more important than even making a living, because near the end of the movie, Kevin's talking about how he's got the cooked books. I've seen the books, Dad. I don't bring in as much as the books say. And he's like, that's a fucking excuse, Yeah. And he has no business acumen whatsoever. He just wants to be the champ, and his bloodline be the champ too.
Yeah, Fritz is an interesting character. Some people who knew him very well and worked beside him say this movie represented him very well, and others say it didn't. So, like with anything else, he was probably more complex than this movie can afford.
Sure,
because he's playing a particular thematic role in the film. But Fritz was a guy who would sell photos of his kids in their coffin.
Okay, I got you. Yeah, that guy. Wow.
Yeah. And he came from a different era. He came from, like the 30s, 40s, 50s professional wrestling, probably 40s and 50s. And so he came from a different era. And in that era, it was way more protected. It was way more akin to like boxing.
Okay.
It was in many ways more physical. The guys would really go in there and beat the hell out of each other, which I think is really well represented in like the opening of the movie, the black and white, where it's just a close up on Fritz's torso as he's pounding somebody into the corner of and then as you see, by the time we get to Carrie and Kevin and all the rest of them, there's slightly more acrobatics. There's a lot more theatrics.
Planning of the hits and whatnot.
Yeah.
Pulling punches.
It's not a smoke arena. It's an arena, but it wasn't a smoky black and white arena in a ring with a spotlight on the ring and two guys in black trunks beating the crap out of each other. It became more of a theatrical kind of presentation. And that's always been a part of professional wrestling since it was on TV, due to Gorgeous George. But the formula really began to change and lean way more towards the theatrics and acrobatics in particular, which they call high fly. So more fast-paced, coming off the top rope sort of stuff. Less brawling.
Yeah,
Fritz was a brawler.
Yeah, I can't imagine him doing any high flying.
No.
No. Especially
he was a brawler, and like most of the early wrestlers had like collegiate wrestling backgrounds, which they ironically call amateur wrestling, even though it's real wrestling, which is a sticking point between the two genres.
Sure.
But yeah, so most of them they would call them shooters because they could actually wrestle for real. And so most of those guys had a real boxing, amateur wrestling, Greco-Roman wrestling style, Olympic wrestling background. And those were your champs because they looked legitimate, because they were basically legitimately wrestling just with a predetermined ending. Well, and then it got further and further away from that into more basically choreography to where it is today, which is essentially like ballet.
So soap opera ballet, yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Number one, I can't move on without saying Zac Efron flying from the top ropes was very impressive.
Incredible.
I was watching it and I'm like, for one, the the sacrifice that the dude had to do to get in the shape that he was.
Yes.
He went from a kind of a heartthrob, pretty fit, but, thin-ish guy, he was a little bit thicker than an otter, if you're using, the Pride terminology, a little thicker than that, maybe a little less hairy. And then he went full on into He-Man, caveman, sculpted out of clay, dipped in water. Yeah. That's just, people talk about.
Just him and the tidy whiteys getting up in the morning.
The first shot when he wakes up in the morning, you're like, come on.
And you see all of the muscle fibers in his upper pec move just as he elbows himself up out of the bed. I'm like, I remember seeing it in theaters, and I watched it again for your show, and I'm like, insane.
It's
and yes,
incredible.
Is he incredibly enhanced? Yes, he is. Obviously, he's juiced to the gills.
Yeah,
as all wrestlers are, or most, I should say. But that's also a lot of hard work, a lot of dieting in particular. He's carrying almost no body fat, almost no water weight.
Mm-hmm. It really looked in that first scene like he had been cutting water weight for a day and a half. It's just spitting
just to
constantly.
Get out of bed.
And when you transcend from having big muscles to being able to see the fibers in the muscle through the skin, it's just it's almost unhuman, and that's a feat in itself. So big props to Zac Efron for that. But then on top of it, taking the physical sacrifice to do the high flying rope work and stuff.
Yes,
and he does it. I mean, there's no faking it. Just like wrestling may have a predetermined, outcome, they're still out there beating the shit out of each other and slamming their bodies on the ground and hitting each other with chairs and all this kind of stuff. I don't think
most people understand how a wrestling ring is actually constructed. It's basically a steel frame that's empty, and then you take 2x4s, plywood, and you lay it across, and there's usually one or two layers of that. And then you take a very, very small, probably like less than a 1/4 inch of foam padding, almost what used to be on the back of carpet.
Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But probably thinner than that. And then it's just canvas pulled across it and tied to the ring. So there's no gymnastics pad. There's nothing you are landing on plywood being supported by steel.
Interesting.
The ropes are either literal ropes and as taut as could be. More often they're steel cables that are wrapped in a colored tape. Mm-hmm. So when they're bouncing off the ropes, those ropes aren't giving and bouncing them. That is their body weight, because if you run into a rope and you don't throw your entire body into it, the rope doesn't move. Mm. So you actually have to build body calluses under around your lats
like the side
and
of
your
ribs.
back. Yeah.
Ugh, that's
to
crazy.
be able to do it. And so one of the main drills that wrestlers do is just called running the ropes.
And he does it
because you have to hit it at the right spot fast enough to get the rope to bend and move. The rope is not adding to your momentum. That's you would think when you're looking at it, it's like rubber or
it's
something.
Like a slingshot,
and it slings them out. That's all their own momentum and change of momentum from side to side. And so just that alone would beat the crap out of your body. So for an actor to be like, I'm going to train with Chavo Guerrero, who is the son of Chavo Classic, is what we call him, as a Mexican wrestler, a famous Guerrero family. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to do most of this stuff, and all the guys involved, we're going to do most of this stuff ourselves, unless it's just we'd break our necks if we did it. And that's pretty much what everyone involved did. They did as much of their own wrestling work as possible.
Yeah, and it shows. I mean, that none of it feels phony or fake. And it's kind of interesting that Fritz would. I like when he finally gets all his sons kind of together. They do the 3-on-3, and he addresses the crowd after the win, and he's got his fourth, and he's got Mikey up there with him in street clothes, and he addresses the crowd and just says, Kevin. No, it wasn't Kevin. It was going to be Kerry. No, he called out David. He said David's going to be the first Von Erich with the title, world champion, blah, blah, blah. And then it's going to be Kevin. And then it's going to be Kerry. And then Mikey. And Mikey's like, what the fuck? You see the look on his face. He goes, maybe I should hit the gym because I'm kind of a lightweight here. But the idea when when he gets the first shot to go, I think he tells Kevin that he has a shot to fight. What's his name? The big dude who dresses the camera and says, "I am the man." What is his name?
Talking about Harley Race?
Harley Race, that's it.
Yeah.
When he gets the shot to fight Harley Race, he tells him, Kevin, what a big deal it is. And he goes, this is your shot. It's not a title shot, but you're fighting the guy that has the belt. So you can get noticed. And this is the first step to get the title that they took it away from me so many times. And he was going Uncle Rico on him. And the problem was, in my head, if Fritz doesn't realize that they're not going to make a literal Nazi character the world heavyweight champion, it's the Iron Claw. Isn't he supposed to be like a straight up Nazi?
Yes, yeah.
Why would they?
He took a family name. It was like his mom's maiden name or something, and grandma's maiden name, and well, because he was a heel, and he was the bad guy in wrestling, and the most popular bad guys in 1950s professional wrestling were either effeminate, fill in your own blanks there, or were foreigners, and in particular Germans, and for obvious reasons. So you're either Japanese. In fact, if somebody was sneak attacked in wrestling, they called it being Pearl Harbored.
Wow. Okay.
Like on the broadcast, they'd be like, they Pearl Harbored him. Like it was stoke as much ethnic xenophobia as you possibly could, and usually in a given territory, your main wrestler was whatever the predominant ethnicity was for that region.
Interesting.
So even if you were in a segregated area, if the majority of your ticket buyers were African American, even if you were a bigot, your champion was black. Because they say there was a term in wrestling: the only color we see is green.
Yeah, there you go.
And so if you were in the Northeast, that's why you had someone like Bruno Sammartino, who was the world heavyweight champion for 10 years in Madison Square Garden, because you're in New York where all of these Italian Americans are. So you want Bruno Sammartino to be your champion. What was always strange to me is when Fritz comes off the road and does world-class championship wrestling, all of the kids and himself just maintain this name Von Erich, which is, like to your point, is basically like Victor Von Doom. It's like a cartoonish, like German name.
Adolf von Nazis.
Right, but they're like they're literally, and in the world of wrestling, all American Southern rock boys, like Pretty Boy, all Americans.
I didn't even make that connection, or I should say the separation. I didn't put that together. That's so.
And I don't think anybody else did either, because and that's how. To answer your first question, that's how big they were, that nobody gave a shit that their last name was Von Erich and was like, wait, that doesn't sound American to me. They embraced them as like, this is what Texas is. Yeah. They embody the spirit of Texas. Yeah. Can you imagine that today, of somebody being like, whatever, Johnny non-binary, being like, that guy,
all American pie,
all American,
I drove the Chevy to
Texas man,
that's right, flying out with my pride flag right next to my Confederate flag.
It just wouldn't work, but that's how popular they were.
That's really interesting. I mean, the thing that I thought was really kind of surprising is when I should say telling, he's in the diner with Lily James, who is just a vision in this. The cupcake, she's so sweet, gorgeous.
If I there's that song, If I Ever Fall in Love, It Will Be Forever. I've fallen in and out of love so many times, Pete. It's been for a while, but it's never been forever. But I swear to God that, like, as a grown man, I'm like, that sequence of the woman just picks you.
I know.
Right? And
he's too dumb to know it either.
Let me be too dumb to know it. You just pick me. Let's go get ribs. And then just basically set the course of my life. And then when I trauma dump on you, just climb into my lap and make it all better.
Yeah.
It's not how they met in real life. It's not how it happened, but it doesn't matter. That's a great scene. And it captures the spirit of Pam, his real life wife, Kevin's real life wife, who she really was a veterinarian. And I think she's just retired semi-recently. And they've had a great marriage for years and years. God bless them. But, she plays that perfectly. She's so good in this movie.
Yeah.
And I know we're kind of beating around the bush, but beyond the physicality of it, I mean, I think it's a travesty that Zac Efron was not nominated for an Academy Award and didn't win an Academy Award.
Yeah.
I think in retrospect, and I thought at the time, but recency bias, but now 6 months later or however long since the movie came out, I think he's got the best performance of the best leading male performance of last year by far.
It's hard to say because I mean he was transformative, period. And there's a physical aspect, the physical transformation, the preparation leading up to it aspect, and then just his character's range of emotions. He goes from almost a manipulated simpleton at the beginning, where it's just like, okay, Daddy, I'll do whatever you want, Daddy, and you see the cogs twisting and the puzzle pieces falling in place for him to realize, well, why David? I'm the one, and and there's so many very small nuanced reactions.
Oh my God! You're right on the money with that, because the script, I'm all in script brain right now for obvious reasons, and I'm just going. They communicate so much with a simple line of dialogue, and literally just where the emphasis is on the syllable. Like after he goes berserk on Flair, which never quite happened, but that's fine. I was just speaking of Kevin. And Fritz and Carrie, this is after Carrie's accident, are in the locker room, and Flair comes in and is like, I thought you were kind of a softie, but blah, blah, blah. By the way, the worst part of this movie is Ric Flair. Everything about that guy, the way he looks, the way he talks, the way he woos is terrible. It's the one
It's hard.
bad
It's so
part
hard.
of this movie.
He's so iconic. No one's going to be able to nail that.
100%, but that guy's terrible.
Okay.
And anyway, so, because Harley's not even, he looks like Harley kind of, but he doesn't sound anything like Harley. And Harley had a very specific way of talking, but it still works.
Okay.
Anyway, it's the way that he says, Ric Flair doesn't give a shit that this guy just went off on him in the ring because it made the match good. But Fritz still gives a shit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the way he says to Carrie, he goes, come on, son. And Zac Efron as Kevin just sort of eventually he's just sitting there and just kind of scoffs, just starts chuckling to himself. Because the implication is, you're not my son. This is my son.
Yeah.
Because he does what I tell him to do. And there's so many lines like that. I mean, Moira Tierney has a bunch of lines like that of how I need a new dress. That's a very efficient way of saying, I've worn this dress to the last 3 funerals, right?
Yeah.
And we don't get a whole speech like Still Magnolias. We get, she can't go to the funeral because I need a new dress.
Yeah.
And then Lily, James, nobody cares. Pam, nobody cares. We're all just here for you.
And it's not about that. It's about the fact that she's been wearing this dress to death. And the thing that's really wild about this movie is, you can tell me about this because you're thinking in this 3-act structure is traditional, right? It doesn't feel to me like it's got a 3-act structure. It feels like the second act just gets going and then they just pull the e-brake and the rest is just downhill. It's like tragedy after tragedy after tragedy. You don't even get to recover from it. You're like, oh my gosh, he lost his leg? That's crazy. Literally like less than 5 minutes on the runtime of the movie after David dies.
Yeah.
And then immediately the next accident happens. And then immediately the suicide. And you're just like, holy fuck, give me a chance to breathe.
And that's, they did because they got rid of another brother's death.
That's the craziest part.
They cut a lot of tragedy out of the movie because otherwise structurally it wouldn't work.
I don't think
so
people
this
wouldn't
is them
believe
going,
it.
we gotta let them breathe a little bit because otherwise, and it has continued with other Von Erichs.
That's really.
So, yeah.
Oh, that's really sad. Brianna and I were watching it. We watched this twice. We watched it once when it hit streaming, and then once for the show just yesterday. And she looked at me when we were done to go, I never really believed about family curses until this, but now I believe it. I think there is a curse, a Von Erich curse.
If anybody's ever had one, I do think it's them. And something I noticed this time I didn't so much notice the first time, because there's almost especially for me, there's a lot to take in, and there's a part of my brain that's going, okay, are they going to get this right? The whole time. And this time I already knew where the soft spots were, I guess. It kind of carries through, but it's especially true at the beginning, that when we transition from the black and white footage
Yeah.
to color, and we were up into the 70s and early 80s. It almost looks like documentary sports footage from that time. The grain is a little bit different, and we get that wide tracking shot of Kevin running. You know, the first in the morning, right? He tries to get David up to run.
Yeah,
David doesn't want to run, and he's out there running, and the voiceover kicks in, and it looks like you're watching like Pumping Iron with Schwarzenegger. Like it has that same kind of verite quality to it. And the movie actually very slowly transitions in and out of a more documentary style and a more cinematic style. And it does it seamlessly. And I think the effect of that is it gives this whole movie this sort of dreamlike quality, right? Where it doesn't feel like a sports drama, even though that's what it is.
Yeah, yeah.
It kind of feels like memories. It feels like it has this sort of etherealness to it in a way. And then the other thing I noticed is that the Fritz character, Holt
McCallany.
Yeah, McCallany. They give him a lot of clunky dialogue.
Yeah.
Because it's always his job to explain to the normies in the audience who aren't sickos like me what wrestling is, for the most part, right?
And how much he structures the family.
Correct.
You all know that the rankings are, Kevin's favorite.
Correct.
Like,
yeah,
okay,
you got it. And he says it just like that. Like, you all know that I have my favorites, but the rankings can change. And so he's constantly has to explain what the rules of the NWA are and who gets title shots and how it worked in the family. And on the page, that's not a well-written character, and that's not a good character, right? He's a one-note character who's kind of an asshole the entire time, and who doesn't really seem to give a shit about his wife and kids because all he cares about is his own glory. And all he says is exposition for the most part.
Yeah, he's the exposition stand-in.
But that performance is by choosing to make everything Fritz says be didactic. Fritz only speaks in didactic terms, and when he's not speaking didactically, he is speaking proverbially. He only speaks in proverbs and didactics. And so therefore the you lose track that this character's purpose is to serve exposition because everything he says has this sort of chopped cadence that you all know, like he's always pronouncing something.
Listen, Kevin, you're my oldest son that's still alive.
But you understand, like that would be awful, but the way he performs it is it's incorporated.
It makes sense within the family structure.
Fritz is dominating of everybody. We all know this. It doesn't matter that you know it. It matters that he is saying it. He is dictating to you. This is your role. He's constantly reestablishing where everybody stands with him at all times. And in the hands of a lesser actor, I don't know if that was a directorial choice or an actor's choice but that whole role would have sucked.
Yeah, he filled the role really well, and I have only seen him in Mindhunters, David Fincher's series, and he's very good in it. Plays essentially.
I guarantee you've seen him in more.
Yeah,
because you've watched a lot of movies, and he was very active in the 80s as a character actor, but he looked very different.
Yeah, I saw after I noticed him in Mindhunter, I went back and looked through his catalog. I'm like, I don't even remember him in half these movies because he's been there. He kind of reminds me of Jonathan Banks, who plays Mike Ehrmantraut from Breaking Bad. He's like the Better Call Saul's hitman. He's been in a shitload of stuff, but I noticed him in this and then go, holy shit, that's Mike. Mike's in that. He's in Beverly Hills Cop. No, I think it's a good point. And I got a question for you too about, maybe it's just more of a statement of something I noticed. There's huge parts about the movie, about the story that you would think would be capitalized on and heavily focused on and shown front and center in the story, and they're relegated to a very small snippet on the TV when Carrie fights against somebody and brings the belt home right before his motorcycle accident.
Yes.
That entire thing is done, and it's just the mom sitting on the couch watching the TV, and then Kevin's up on the stairs watching it like a small child who's been relegated to his room. It's like it's a very specific choice to have him sitting on the chair on the stairs looking down like a kid watching his parents fight. And it's his brother basically winning the title for their family for the first time, and he's just pouting. And you're thinking, that's an important fight, but we don't need to see that. We just see it come back in the belts here. And I was like, did we just skip over the most important fight of this family's entire life?
Yes.
Because it's not about that. It's about the family
correct.
dynamic and how they interact with each other and the, perceived hierarchy and the actual hierarchy.
It's also smart on that two fronts. One, it keeps the it signals to you as the audience member of this movie's not about wrestling. This is what it's really about. So we're going to stick with what it's really about, which is like you said, the dynamics between these people. But also, there were like 75,000 plus people there to watch that, and that would cost a lot of money.
I see.
So if you just show it on TV and
you don't even show the TV, you just hear it.
Right, right. Yeah. I think we see like a half-ass entrance, and then it cuts to the TV, and then it cuts to him on the stairs. Then we don't have to, that's the, whatever, $20 million of CGI work to fill out a stadium, Texas Stadium, would have to do it. So,
budget on this movie only just a hair under 16 million.
Yeah.
Gross 45. Not bad.
So what you'd have to do is again, this is just where my brain is. You have to go to the screenplay and go, what was written? Or did they see an opportunity out of and go, well, we can't film that because that's too expensive, but it actually serves the story better that we don't.
Yeah. Here's our chance to pivot.
Yeah.
No. I know you have a hard out here coming pretty soon. Do you have any specific scenes that you want to call out that make this an Oscar-winning movie that was a shame that it was passed up?
I mean, the whole movie, but three that come to mind. One we already talked about, which is the diner scene, which again is just all exposition. Because they do this this I think is written like this on purpose. Very smart in that we see two little boys at the beginning of the movie in black and white. And then when we come to present day, or what the present day of this movie is, there's a whole host of them.
Yeah.
So you're like, I don't really know who's who. Which one of these kids is who. And then in the diner, he's like, oh, I'm not the oldest. I had an older brother. He died. You're like, wait a minute. We lost a kid already? Right?
Yeah.
And so then you realize it reorganizes in your mind the structure of the family, which is very smart.
Yeah.
So that's very good, because that could have just been an exposition dump, but it isn't. And Efron is excellent in it.
And Newt died off screen, and everyone was pissed, except for this was a character we'd never met before, so it was appropriate.
Right. The second one is, in the hands of a lesser movie, the entire concept would be stupid, but it is Carrie joining his brothers in ostensibly heaven. Oh God,
great scene. And then
that could go wrong. That would go wrong 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, it could look like a parody of Happy Gilmore looking at Chubbs up in heaven,
Yes.
It very easy to step over that line. And I think what led,
and he meets the older brother who's still a child, and hugs him and like, you're my big brother. And it's like, that would just go wrong so many times, but it doesn't.
Even the way they talk to each other, he's like, oh, hey brother.
Yeah.
And you're like, that could be so bad. They even do a great thing where, because I think that another different director would probably choose to make that scene much later in the movie, after the funeral has happened and emotions have passed, but it's like still fresh. His body's on the table in the kitchen, and his brother's still mourning, weeping over his bloody body.
Which leaves it ambiguous as to, is this what his hope is?
Yeah. I didn't think about that.
Is this Kevin's hope, that in his mind, he's imagining his brothers being reunited? Is this how he's processing the grief? Or is this literally happening? Are we actually seeing heaven? We don't know.
Yeah. And for the first time I watched it, I'm like, this is a flashback? I kind of thought this was going to show how he got the gun and went out to the tree. Because he's wearing the same clothes. And then I saw the spot under the shirt, and I'm like, what is that? And Brianna goes, that's his gunshot. His clothes are healed, but he's dead. I'm like, motherfucker. And he goes to the boat, and I'm like, oh, they're going to Bilbo Baggins this guy across over to the Greyhaven.
Yep.
And I'm going to say a really personal thing. I have a close friend who's lost his grandmother recently, and I went to the funeral. And a lot of times you go to funerals and you see people make at a wedding, you get, Corinthians 11 or whatever it is. It's like, oh, love is gentle, love is kind, love is this and that. And it's like, okay, that's what you say at a wedding. At a funeral, a lot of times you get these this is by the book, this is how, we're going to read the passage of the Bible that talks about eternal life and all this kind of stuff. And it's impactful, but sometimes it feels like it's not super meaningful, or personal, I should say.
Yeah.
So my friend, he read a eulogy for his grandmother, and he read a poem. It was so beautiful to me. And it was about watching one of your loved ones sail away on a boat. They're leaving the shore and they're sailing away. And at some point they'll be gone. I'll never see them again. For me, it's a departure and I'm saying goodbye. But what we don't see is on the other side, there's people welcoming them and they're saying, welcome, you're here now. And I was like, in the moment, emotionally crushed, just gutted. And then I watched the movie the first time before that funeral. And then I watched it again just last night after the funeral. And I was like, all of that together combined was just like emotions rushing through me.
Oh yeah.
And you're given this whiplash from the emotional heartbreak and the tearing apart of just what he's 60 feet away, could have stopped him, saw the door open, so much just on the edge. It's like you were on the edge of being able to save him and you couldn't. And it wasn't his fault, but he's going to make his fault. And then now it's the dad. There's just so much wrapped up in there. And then you just smash cut. All that heartache is gone. There, he's on the boat. He goes, sees the brothers. And then it comes back and he's just staring at his body, weeping. And you're just like, fuck me. That's the emotional gamut that I want to get from a movie to pull my heart out and force me to feel things that I don't want to feel in real life. So it was...
Well, that's beautifully shared. On the back of that, the same thing is the third and final one would be, with his kids.
Yeah, oh yes. Immediately after that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he's like, "Oh, I used to be a brother, and now I'm not anymore." And the whole thing where men don't cry. And I was like, and the kids are like, "What do you mean? We cry all the time, Dad."
Yeah, that's the
you
best.
Can cry.
Best line in the whole thing. What are you talking about, Dad? We cry all the time.
Yeah, you can cry.
Very disarming.
Like, well, and then the one kid just goes, it's so perfect because it could be bad, but it's not. He's just like, well, do you think you understand why you're sad?
Mm-hmm.
And we just watched all the reasons why he's sad, so we know. And he's like, well, I used to be a brother. And now and it's just that's a way of succinctly putting the grief. And I am thinking of this real guy who I don't know him, but who I've seen off and on through years of Kevin. And I'm like, boy, that is like, it just perfectly encapsulates what I've heard Kevin say in interviews.
Oh, interesting.
And he never said it so succinctly, but that's the spirit, that's the essence of...
I used to be a brother.
Yeah. The closeness that you see throughout the film is very real. They were that close. They really, genuinely were a loving soccer team of brothers. There's so many of them.
Yeah.
And they really, they fought like brothers, but they got along very well. They had this they were each other's safe place. Their mom and dad were not emotionally available to them. Their mom was obsessed with religion, and it's the whole thing. Cursed, and my mom thought she could save us with God, and Dad thought he could save us with wrestling or whatever.
Great, yeah.
And so then just him getting up and playing football with his kids, it's just like, man, if that doesn't wreck you, any of those clips should freaking play at the Academy Awards before they give him a statue. What's wrong with these people?
It's perfect. It makes no sense. I don't get it. And they set it up too on the first time I watched it, I thought to myself, great movie, never going to watch it again. And then I realized that Tyler still had it on the wheel. I'm like, shit, gotta do it, which I'm glad it happened that way. So Tyler, I know you're listening. Thank you for that, because it would be a movie I probably would stay away from for a long time because of just the trauma dump. But having seen it a second time, you're watching the life that they show of them. And it's just like a bunch of Texas boys hanging out in the pickup truck, picking up burgers, playing music in the garage and floating down the river, drinking beers. And I'm like, fuck, that's the life.
Yes.
That's the life. And they had everything. They had what we all want, and they had it shattered. So, and
the boys, this is the heartbreak of that film. The boys were satisfied with that.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously Carrie wanted to go to the Olympics and
thought about like
everything
that,
else, but they were satisfied just with each other. Because when she says, what do you want out of this life, Kevin Von Erich? He's just like, I just want my brothers, right? That's all they want is each other. But it's not enough for Fritz, and their mom is checked out.
Yeah.
So, and it's when Carrie comes home from the boycotted Olympics and he comes in by bus and, he sees his mom and he gives his mom a hug and it's obvious he loves her and she loves him, but it's just a hug and a whatever. And then Fritz is there and he says, sorry, I let you, I'm sorry to disappoint you, sir. And he's like, oh, it's okay. There'll be other opportunities. It wasn't your fault. But then the way he immediately Carrie's entire demeanor changes when he gets to the brothers.
Yeah, you're right.
Like, that's the heart of the family. That's where they're safe, is with each other. And that's the one thing that they got taken away from Kevin. The one thing he wanted. And and he has to find it again in his own family and kids. And the two boys are real. He has a daughter as well, Lacey Von Erich, but the two boys are real. And they're wrestlers. They're just starting their career.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah. And he comes. He's their manager, and he comes out with them. But it's one of those things where they came to him and said they wanted to do it, and he tried to dissuade them. 6 Ways from Sunday, and this is where that line hits, where they want to do it, but they only want to do it with him because they feel like he never got his time.
Oh, wow.
So it's like reversed, right?
Yeah.
It's like, right. He wants it to be, if you're going to do it, it's, it's your time. And they're like, no, but you got so screwed over in life. You're coming with us.
Sure.
And oh my God.
That picture at the end is so great too, because when we were watching the movie, I was kind of looking up the family, and that's how I found out there was an extra son that was left out. And they see that great picture of throwing the baby up way up in the air. And it's like, even the family today still looks great. I mean, they still look like they're having a blast and just in love with life. So very cool.
Yeah.
I think that about does it. Jason, you want to lead us off and give us a grade for the Iron Claw? A to F.
Whoa. A through F?
Or A plus through F minus.
Well, having never seen it and just read the Wikipedia article, I give it an A plus, man.
All right. Hell yeah. Good job. A plus. Sean Durkin did it. Oh, we didn't even mention Sean Durkin. He did Martha, Marcy, May, Marlene, also in movie. Covered on the show years ago, and it was way better than I thought it was going to be. The name scared me away.
Also, the score of this movie is great. I don't know who did it, but it's very good. It stuck out to me this time.
Interesting. It didn't land on me. The cinematography was Matthias Erdely. Never heard of him before. He did
great.
Keanu. Not the movie. Not the movie with Key and Peele in it.
Oh, okay, good.
a different.
Okay.
It's Kano. Sorry, not Keanu.
Okay, all right. I was like, the cat.
There's a bunch of stuff I've never heard before. I think he might be of a different nationality because I haven't heard of any of these movies.
No.
I'm gonna follow suit. I think this is an A+ movie. I think it should have been up for Oscar nominations. I think it's one of the better movies of the year last year. And I think Kevin in the chat mentioned they saw wrestling and they said nope. And I think that there might be some credence to that. I mean, The Wrestler, Mickey Rourke's The Wrestler, was also very good. I don't know if that got any Oscar nod or not, but
I feel like he got nominated. Maybe
I wouldn't be surprised. I really enjoyed that movie. But it's like the Academy.
That's bleak. That's a bleak movie.
Yeah,
that's bleak.
Yeah, that is. But the Academy sees horror and they're like, no, I'm not going to do anything with it.
No horror, no sci-fi, no wrestling.
Yeah, unless it's a blockbuster and they award it the best blockbuster bullshit award.
Yeah.
All right, so that is all we got. And now it's time for the Wheel of Destiny. 1 wheel, 8 slots, 3 hosts. This is the Wheel of Destiny.
Does this spin the wheel, make the wheel? You got an actual wheel there.
All right. Yeah, that's right. Here it is, Wheel of Destiny. People who are watching on YouTube, you can see the mythical wheel. And we don't have a replacement for Tyler. I'm just going to cross that out. I'm ready to give a spin. So I'm going to recap what's on the wheel. We have American History X from Tyler. Dune Part 1 and Part 2 combined for Joseph. Notting Hill from Joseph. Kentucky Fried Movie from Patreon member Heather. Stanford Prison Experiment from Patreon member Jack Fitzpatrick. Mute from Pete and Monster Squad from Pete. Kevin in the chat says the Monster Squad, he's so excited for us to watch it. And he said,
hates it.
Yeah. I was like, who else was saying it? He was saying, can't wait for you guys to watch it. It's terrible. And then someone else wrote in and said, oh, Monster Squad, fucking love it. Can't wait.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Is Rapa Nui on there? Wasn't that supposed to be on there?
No, I already covered that. That was the listener pick that you subjected me to. I assumed you watched it, and then I wanted to talk to you about it. You're like, I've never seen it. It's the guy that did Waterworld right before Waterworld. It's really good. Yeah. All right, let's give it a spin. This is what we watch next week. And it's going to be all three of us, hopefully.
Oh, it's hypnotizing. It's hypnotizing me.
Tighten that up. Ooh. Oh, it's on the Iron Claw. Quick, one more spin. Not going to do that one. Stanford Prison Experiment from Patreon member Jack. Surprised Jack's not in the chat. He usually hops in at the very end here because he's in Australia. So, all right, we will see if that's streaming anywhere. Stanford Prison. All right, let's see if that's streaming anywhere. Fubo. AMC Plus, Paramount Plus, can be Pluto, Plex, and Showtime.
Okay, good.
Cool,
Who is just Fubo?
Oh, fuck Fubo.
Fuck Fubar.
Fubo, I don't understand Fubo. Fubo's like $100 a month, and it has everything streams on Fubo. So it's like cable, I guess. I don't know. It's a very strange service.
Yeah. There's too many of these services.
Yeah,
too many of them. I don't understand them.
All right, boomer take of the day. Yep. All right, Jason, do you want to tell the listeners where to find your show?
Everywhere podcasts are. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man, it's been a delight. You were the correct person to be on the show, and I really appreciate you making the time to be on, so I appreciate it.
Look how the vibe moves, brother. You were in need, you cried out, and the vibe answered.
I did.
Here I am.
I did. All right, so for listeners, thank you for following us as we have 3 different guest hosts this week. Follow us next week as we review the Stanford Prison Experiment from Patreon member Jack Fitzpatrick. Follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/MCFC podcast, and send us an email, mcfcpodcast@gmail.com. And go subscribe to Binge Movies. Take the Binge Movies challenge, follow along, rate and review, all that good stuff. Like and subscribe. And thank you, Jason, for being here again. I really appreciate it.
You're more than welcome. Bless you.
All right, so everyone else, thank you for listening, and binge on.
Class dismissed.
I gotta get out of here.
The bell doesn't dismiss you. I dismiss you.
You're free to go.
See you next week.
See you later. See you later.
That's a wrap.
Great show.